NASA shock, Apollo 15 astronauts moon landing confession. He says, they can't do anything to me now. This is information from Apollo 15 astronaut Al Warden. He piloted the command module on Apollo 15 in 1971. This is by Sebastian Ketley, Express UK. NASA information. Astronaut Alfred Al Warden dropped a space bomb. Astonishing Apollo 15 confession. He claims that NASA can't do anything to him now after 45 years. NASA's Al Warden is one of Apollo program astronauts. He flew to the moon but never landed on its surface. He was commanding the module for Apollo 15, and Warden stayed in lunar orbit while David Scott and James Irwin explored the moon below. NASA astronauts served the same critical function pilot Michael Collins did during the first moon landing in 1969, July 20th, 1969. Apollo 15 had the historic Apollo 11 following after 2 years, July 1971. And at that point, NASA Apollo astronauts have already performed 6 flybys and orbits of the moon. Warden, however, has confessed the mission was not an entirely smooth one. During the speech at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in May of 2017, he revealed how a design feature of the Apollo command module freaked him out. He said to MIT that he kept the incredible story a secret for 45 years. Warden said, when I fired the engine to circularize and I forgot how many feet per second I had to add, instead of looking at the instrument panel, I was suddenly looking out the left window, because when I ignited the engine, that couch, because of Newton, went like this, and now I'm looking up the side window. You talk about freaking out. I was really freaked because I could not reach a single control. So thank God the computer worked and it stopped at the right time and I was okay. I never told anyone that. Only 45 years later, I dare and even try and mention that. They can't do anything to me now, he said. And according to Warden, the 3 seats in the Apollo command module were mounted on swiveled shock absorbers. When the astronaut fired the spacecraft's engine to hit a stable orbit around the moon, he was turned away from the command module's console. So, turned away, facing what? Facing the other seats? My God! Why would they have swivel seats in there anyway? I guess it's that they could get out of the area a lot easier with their astronaut suits on and everything. He said, I get them in the lunar module, they go off, they go down to land, and I'm in the command module by myself. I'm approaching the Apolloon at 60 miles in the back, where I've got to add some velocity to circulate the orbit. And he goes on to explain, so I get to the back side of the moon, and I did not think about this, but we have 3 couches in the spacecraft. One on the left, and one on the left has a pressure pad that sits against the left wall, and there's a shock absorber on the right side of that couch. Then there's a center couch, and on the other side of that center couch, there's another shock absorber attached to the right couch, which has that right pressure pad. And so you just adjust all that string of material all the way across there, and you can kind of get the couches from bouncing back and forth because you put a little pressure on the pressure pads. Well, the center couch was out. The shock absorber is on a swivel. After Warden's exciting mishap in the command module, his 2 colleagues landed on the moon July 30th, 1971, and Apollo 15 spent more than 18 hours on the surface of the moon, returning to Earth on August 7th. That's about a week later. Now, how many people do we know that walked on the moon? Between 1969 and 72, there have been a total of 7 Apollo missions launched to the moon. Only one of these missions, Apollo 13, failed to land on the lunar surface. Apollo 11, July 20th, 69, was the first to accomplish the historic feat of landing a man on the moon. Apollo 17 on December 11, 1972, was NASA's final lunar landing. And to date, there have been 12 astronauts who have walked on our moon. Astronauts who stood on the surface include command module pilots who stayed on lunar orbit. Apollo 11, Commander Neil Armstrong, lunar module pilot Buzz Aldrin, command module pilot Michael Collins. Apollo 12, Commander Charles Conrad, lunar module pilot Alan Bean, command module pilot Richard Gordon. Apollo 14, I guess Apollo 13 has the unlucky 13 attached to it here, we would say. Apollo 14, Commander Alan Shepard, lunar module pilot Edgar Mitchell, command module pilot Stuart Roosa. Apollo 15, Commander David Scott, lunar module pilot Alfred Warden, that just told us about what happened to him swiveling back away from the console. Command module pilot James Irwin. Apollo 16, Commander John Young, lunar module pilot Charles Duke, command module pilot Thomas Mattingly. Apollo 17, Commander Eugene Cernan, lunar module pilot Harrison Schmitt, command module pilot Ronald Evans. Quick fact about NASA's Apollo 15 moon landing: it was the first mission that carried the lunar rover roving vehicle, or the lunar buggy. NASA mission collected 167 pounds of lunar rock samples, assumingly bringing them back to Earth. Apollo 15 was the fourth NASA mission to land astronauts on the moon. The mission landed on the moon's Apennine Highlands near the Hadley Rille, and one of the command module's 3 parachutes failed during descent to Earth, but the spacecraft only needs two to safely splash down, thank goodness, so they made it back safely. And since then, we have not been back to the moon. This is over 40 years ago, and the big question is why? Why have we not been back to the moon? Could anybody answer that for me? Because I still have no idea why we have not been back. Now, in conclusion, we find that the astronauts, for the most part, have been pretty lucky to get up there, to have landed, to have control of their modules, even though they had some hiccups with their seats, their swivel seats, or their parachutes not opening up. Unbelievable luck. In the meantime, we know that Neil Armstrong recently made a confession or a revelation that they had found towers on Mars. And he says, when we get to see those things, we'll say, wow, who put those things up there? So there you go. There are those who believe that before the vast, very many extinction level events that took place on Earth, that humans, for example, the Atlanteans, were very advanced in technology, and that they could have traveled to the other planets of our solar system. We have found out recently, for example, that comets hold water, that comets have O2 oxygen, as well as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. And we even found out that Earth's atmosphere encompasses the moon and goes way beyond the moon. Next thing you know, we'll be breathing on the moon without helmets. I have no idea what's going on. We're finding out so many things. Anyway, I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. and we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.